Hello, this is Joshua for Frost Dragon Designs, and today I'd like to talk about my Undead Barbarian design for Black Cat RPG Series 5, The Lichgate. Now let's get into the design. The Undead Barbarian was one of the first 3 or 4 designs that I made for this project, and the reason I did that, I picked a few designs that I thought would be especially difficult to translate into kind of a skeletal cat figure. And I wanted to try to do those first before doing the rest of the project because this is supposed to be, all of the classes from D&D. I didn't want to, get like 6 or 7 designs in and then get to something that was more challenging and say, oh, this really isn't going to work, because that would kind of hobble the entire project. So I wanted to start with the ones that I thought would pose the most difficult design challenges, and I figured if I could get past those, then the rest would be easy. The reason that the Barbarian I thought would be challenging is because, what is the look and feel of a Barbarian typically? It's usually like a big, muscular kind of character, right? They're shirtless a lot of the times. If nothing else, at least bare arms, unless they're in like really cold climates. So the look of them has a lot to do with their muscle mass. And I think you can probably see the problem. If this is a skeletal cat, there is no muscle mass. So we had to get kind of creative with how we were going to visualize that mass and power in a way that didn't involve muscles. Obviously, the first layer, the first step of that is going to be big bones. There's always that joke, he's not fat, he's just big boned. Well, in this case, for the skeletal barbarian, he is in fact big boned. Especially the upper arm bones there, the femurs, are much thicker and broader than the femurs in any of the other cat designs. But even that by itself isn't enough, because even having those thicker bones, that still doesn't really fill the void of where the muscle would be. It helps, but it doesn't completely compensate for it. So then I had to start getting creative with maybe parts of his attire could be stand-ins for some of that bulk. And as the final design shows, I also used kind of this elemental flame magic around the skeleton. That makes up the rest of the visual mass. It's not really like a weighty thing. It's basically like, fire or some sort of glowing effect around the bones. But that's the stand-in visually for where, the muscle mass would have been present. As for the color scheme, most of the time when working on this, I was envisioning kind of, red flames wreathing the bones, because of the whole rage aspect of a barbarian. And the end, I ended up shifting that to the kind of sickly greens, mostly because I really wanted to use the red flame for the living barbarian. I thought for a little while that I was going to use blue as the flame color on the living barbarian, but it looked too peaceful and serene. So I shifted that one to red, and then I shifted this one to the sickly greens. And honestly, I think it works really well. This has a very, deep kind of decaying look about it. Like, when I look at this, I feel like I smell wet dirt, if that makes any sense. Another interesting design aspect of this pin, I wasn't really sure whether I wanted this to be like a sword-wielding barbarian or an axe-wielding barbarian, and I finally was just like, let's do both. It was also super helpful that I used that kind of animal hide cowl up on his head. For all of these designs, I've needed something as a stand-in for cat ears. For a lot of the designs, it's really just like magical energy cat ears for the skeletons. I didn't have to do that with this one because his cowl has those nice black ears on the animal pelt. And so overall, I feel like this design just really came together really well. I like this design. It's probably one of my bigger pins that isn't supposed to be a big pin. Like, this was supposed to be kind of a, quote, standard, unquote, size pin. But it's pretty big. It's 2.2 inches, so I mean, yeah, that's pretty big. Anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed watching me design this pin. I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about my thoughts of the design. If you did, go ahead and like and subscribe. I try to release at least one new video every week, and I would love to have you along for the next one. So thanks again so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.